Hi folks, we're Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the case in Georgia with Fani Willis and her team of goons that coordinate with the White House and the deep state to go after Trump on in my opinion, very spurious, very minimally justifiable legal cases. Now, I don't think there's any doubt that it's a deep state thing to go after Trump on this, but the Trump team fought back on pointed out conflicts of interest, lying under oath, and other generally inappropriate financial and personal behaviour from the low IQ district attorney Fani Willis. Now, the judge has just recently, in the last 24 hours or so, made a number of decisions or rulings. So let's have a look at those. Now, I guess wherever you get, it's much easier than people think to politicize or create an ideological court. You know, as a younger man with less legal experience and so on, I thought it'd be very difficult to do this. There are just too many watchdogs, too many safeguards, too many independent actors that are involved in a legal case. So it'd be very hard, I thought, to corruptly affect the court, whether it be corruption, financial, ideological, or whatever. But it's actually not that hard. And my first exposure to this was looking at the goings on in the divorce courts, how it was the corruption along ideological lines was effortless. So the prejudice in the divorce courts is that he's the evil, wicked, bad Nazi fascist oppressor, and she's the oppressed victim, and da 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 da. So that's the beginning point of pretty much every case. And therefore it's about compensation and restitution, all sorts of making good on restitution, all sorts of making good on centuries of oppression and this and that. So a whole lot of things are baked into the process that create. It's okay if you accuse the straight white male of being a Nazi fascist, wife bashing, pedophile, oppressor. It's okay if you do that, because ideologically, if he wasn't, then the other guy was, so he should be punished for the sins of his class or his gender or whatever. So and they think like that, these people. So they have no compunction over committing the most mind-boggling perjury. Now, but there's also other factors. For example, there are psychologists that do reports on the so-called family report, and some of these people can make, that may be lucky to make $100,000 a year in a good year, can make $1 million a year because they will reliably pump out reports that says that he is a wife-bashing, child-abusing oppressor, and so on, which then the judge can use. Well, there you go. The independent experts said, I'm only doing what the independent. So they've got all. Now, if the psychologist does not reliably pump out those reports, then he's going to find he's back to making an ordinary income, or he can do what's expected of him or her, often her actually, rather than him. And they can make a lot of money and live in very, very privileged circumstances, provided they commit wholesale perjury on a daily basis. The same can be said for any of the other operatives in and around the court system. They're there to commit perjury. And now also the judges, they will hold him under a very high burden of proof, but will hold her under a very low burden of proof. So if she says, well, he beat me every day and beat the children or something, or this or that, so something like that, then that allegation alone, vague. Well, where did this happen? Don't know. When did it happen? Can't remember. Well, what were the circumstances? I don't know. Even so, the judge, and I've seen this happen, the judge will say, well, Mrs. Smith says that he's a wife-beating pedophile, Nazi fascist, worships Hitler and so on. And she says that. So even though there's no evidence, there's no corroboration, there's no proof, there's nothing, I will accept that allegation as fact, says the judge. So if Mr. Smith wants to refute it, then he needs to prove that he was, in another universe at the time, and that's the only evidence I will accept. So by putting a very low burden of proof on one party and an exceptionally high burden of proof on another, they can produce the outcomes they want, along whether it be ideological or other lines, or politicized lines. So this is, that's a stark example, but this is how ideological and politicized courts produce outcomes, how they find one party guilty or culpable or liable. Now, Trump's getting this left, right, and centre, the E. Jean Carroll case, the New York case with, Letitia James and so on. And to a large extent, in my view at least, I see this in the Georgia case, where the judges just made a decision. Fani Willis has been given the option, as I understand it anyway, given the option. So you can continue with this case. Well, I'll drop a few things off, but you continue this case, but you've got to get rid of Nathan Wade, your boyfriend, as a prosecutor, because it's not a good look. Or you can, leave him on the case and you can go. Now that's no big choice. That's nothing. That's bullshit. So she moves him to one side and keeps him as a legal consultant on the same salary, the same income or some consulting fee. So he's going to get looked after. That's no problem. They just move him to a different part of the balance sheet for payment. And then Fani just gets some other flunky goon that the White House and the deep state has probably already selected for her, and she employs them, and on they go. So it's not it's not really going to affect anything at all. Sure, Fani's taken a couple of hits on the credibility side, and sure, there's still enough smouldering ruins of things that the Trump team can use to maybe go to an appeal court or constantly use to jibe at her during any subsequent legal case. But she can continue really now without impediment. All she's got to do is move one guy out of the way and move in another flunky to sit in the spot. So what? Big deal. So this is hardly a ruling by the judge that deals with the issue. As I understand it, again, in the judge's ruling, this is, Fani's behaviour wasn't really that good. It's not a but gee, the Trump team didn't prove that Fani did these things. They didn't have photographs prove that Fani did these things. They didn't have photographs of the two of them sleeping together before this or that date. They can't conclusively prove to a 100% burden of proof, 100% burden of proof that the things they're alleging against Fani and Nathan Wade are true or accurate. 100% burden of proof. Now, conversely, when it comes to Fani's case against Trump, they're lucky to get a 5% burden. I think the cases are bullshit, and yet a very low burden of proof is all Fani needs to launch these proceedings, and no one's stopping her from that. And if you look at the aspects of Fani's cases that activist cases that she's been told she can't proceed with, they're the ones that do require a high burden, a decent burden of proof. But she's still allowed to run with others that have the really just vague allegations against Trump and nothing more, and require extensive and lengthy fishing expeditions as they desperately cast around looking for something they can use or that they can throw around as being a possible issue. So we really need to sort of, I think, some of the conservative commentators are saying this is a victory for the Trump team, and they're in a better position than they were before they went after Fani on these things or exposed misbehaviours and inappropriate use of taxpayer funds, and so they're in a better position than then. But it's far from being a victory. In my view, it's far from being a victory. And I you know, if I was part of their team, I would go to an appeals court on this to say that the whole thing should be dropped, as it has no substance, and take it all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary. And they should continue going after, I believe, in my view, they should continue going after Fani Willis, because given her casual misbehaviour and her contempt for proper behaviour and procedure and so on, there's bound to be plenty more that could be dug up for someone that has that much contempt for the law and the processes and procedures around it. There's bound to be plenty more. So they should go after that. But is this a victory for the Trump team? No, it's a minor tactical achievement at best. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.